You know, I wasn't so sure about this topic initially, but I got sucked into quite a few interesting rabbit holes. Have a look.
I need an egg.
Kinder Eggs are egg-shaped milk chocolates encasing a yellow capsule with a toy inside. They're one of the most popular treats across Europe, with billions sold since its debut. On 2016 YouTube, surprise egg openings were the money printer. This was brain rot before brain rot. Sadly though, us Americans have been missing out because of a 1938 law. Candy cannot contain anything inedible to ensure a child does not choke to death. That one sad onion will not save you, because the FDA argues that sugary desserts target all ages, including those under 3. Very few children have actually died choking on a Kinder toy. If anything, you're more likely to get salmonella. That's a surprisingly common issue with them. But regardless, the US government stands by it, and importing just one egg could land you a $2,500 fine. My God. Fortunately, Kinder was able to find a small loophole. In 2017, they released Joy Eggs, where instead of the capsule being inside the egg, the toy is one half, and this partially suspicious cream is the other. It's stupid that they even have to do this, but the Joy Eggs tasted pretty good, so I'll accept it. But you know what I won't accept? Hackers trying to steal my data. Luckily, that's not an issue thanks to today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is a service that monitors the dark web and quickly alerts you if it finds your personal information. Your bank account and credit cards may be out there somewhere for people to make very illegal purchases, like Kinder Eggs. That's what Aura seeks out to prevent. Should anything like this happen, Aura could compensate you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. It can also opt out of any data brokers that sell this information. Within just a few weeks of using Aura, you will notice a decrease in spam calls and emails. The app even comes with a VPN that supports over 100 virtual locations. There's really not much that Aura can't do. If you value your privacy, go to aura.com/thundereagle for a 14-day free trial. Now back to the video.
Where's the chase?
Casu Marzu is sheep milk cheese containing live maggots. That is not a joke, it literally translates to rotten cheese. To make it, they leave cheese outside for flies to lay eggs in it, which could be up to 500 at a time. Then, they hatch into maggots and feed on the cheese, creating an intense one-of-a-kind flavor. This entire process can take several months. Once finished, it is usually served on flatbread with red wine on the side. However, if the maggots have died out, the cheese is considered unsafe to eat. Casu Marzu is heavily tied to Italy's culture, more specifically the island of Sardinia. One common myth suggested that it made eaters horny, but as time went on, people started to reconsider if it should be eaten. Consuming the dish could result in the maggots surviving digestion and causing some pretty dangerous infections. While no case of this has ever been reported, the Italian government decided it wasn't worth the risk and banned Casu Marzu. The European Union and United States soon followed. But believe it or not, some people just cannot let this meal go, cause a whole ass black market exists and is valued in the millions. I must be missing something.
Can I have a pussy, please?
In 2022, a user named Chef P showcased a pink dipping sauce on the one and only TikTok. I drafted this back when it seemed like TikTok was gonna get banned. People would have had nostalgia and I could have capitalized on it, but I guess it isn't now. Oh well. The videos quickly took off, with viewers debating on whether it looked disgusting or delicious. A few noticed that the sauce's consistency wasn't. It changed color and thickness between clips, but Chef P claimed it was due to lighting. Regardless, demand for this unique creation was apparent, so she listed it for sale on her website with no nutritional information. She did not get approval by the FDA because, I kid you not, she assumed the F stood for pharmaceutical and dealt exclusively with medicine. Then she went on to compare herself to Jesus because he too was scrutinized at first. Florida's health department had to come over and pressure her into listing the ingredients. Once the first batch was sent out, the bottles took 2.5 weeks to deliver in very sloppy packaging during a very hot summer. Oh, and the sauce used dairy. Tons of customers received rotten bottles, and those who actually tried it got food poisoning. One user even faked her own death from the sauce to see if anyone would believe it. Many did. If you somehow got a clean bottle, you'd see that there was no expiration date, and the nutritional info was completely wrong. She couldn't even spell vinegar right. In response, Chef P outright denied that any food poisoning occurred and said she was only selling a prototype, which is very illegal. The FDA was getting ready to investigate after receiving numerous complaints, so she frantically discontinued the product and offered refunds to buyers. But that is not the end of the story. 1 year after, pink sauce came back with a vengeance. Through a partnership with Dave's Gourmet, a revamped version would be sold at select Walmarts. These people actually knew what they were doing, so surely nothing could go wrong this time. It was not pink at all and went on clearance immediately. But it must have been a hit because she claims to have sold 200,000 bottles, right? Well, not long after, Chef P created a GoFundMe because she was struggling to make ends meet. Dave's Gourmet did not pay royalties according to her. Except the company paid more than what she was asking for. P only ended up getting a quarter of her goal and has not been seen since.
Taste the rainbow, motherfucker!
Skittles are fruit-flavored shells of candy that have become an American staple. They're found in just about every store imaginable. Their marketing has thrived for decades, with the iconic slogan, "Taste the Rainbow." Not many products have achieved these heights. Overseas, though, it has not been easy for Skittles. You see, to add color to food, companies use some pretty exotic chemical compounds. Many of the things us Americans eat could cause a litany of problems later down the line. It's no wonder why we have a reputation for being fat. While we do have some regulations on how much can be used, over in Europe, any amount is too much. In 2021, regulators found that titanium dioxide, the compound used for white, could damage your DNA enough to give you cancer. Following this discovery, products that used the dye were phased out of European markets before the Union banned them entirely. In 2023, this would cross the Atlantic Ocean when both California and New York introduced bills banning several additives. As I'm writing this, a federal ban has been a strong consideration. While it is surreal to see such iconic snacks go under, it may be for the better. I'm just kidding. All they have to do is change the formula to comply. You can still buy Skittles. They'll just taste slightly different. Anything telling you otherwise is a complete and utter lie. That includes me. Nothing ever happens.
To me. Fish station. What are we getting for dinner? Fish, of course.
Caviar is a highly expensive dish made from a fish's eggs. It's harvested from all kinds of species, but its most desirable variant comes from the Caspian Sea's beluga sturgeon. This fish takes up to 20 years to start reproducing and can grow to almost 2,000 pounds before it's mature. Just one serving of beluga caviar could cost you hundreds of dollars. Only the richest of the rich get to enjoy this meal, and it's due in large part to the Soviet Union. During World War I, they gained a huge monopoly on the Caspian fishing business, allowing them to pollute all its water and exceedingly overfish the population. This led to beluga sturgeons becoming critically endangered, which only got worse once the Soviet Union fell and took its few regulations with it. In protest, the US banned any and all imports imports of Beluga Caviar. Then, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species agreed to pause all traffic of it. If the sale of Beluga Caviar was to continue, it could only be produced by trusted farms who could keep its population stable. Many countries were able to follow this mantra, so the ban was partially lifted. Despite this though, beluga sturgeons remain critically endangered and illegal poaching continues to threaten them. You people need to leave those damn fish alone. Now excuse me, I'm gonna drink from their house.
Mommy, I want milk, I want to be held, I want to be comforted.
Around 1 million or so years ago, someone randomly decided to drink from a cow's tit, only to discover that it was surprisingly good, and the rest was history. A while after, it was discovered that heating the milk up kills unwanted bacteria and extends the shelf life, so the pasteurization process became standardized. But what if you wanted to embrace tradition and raw dog it? Well, if you drink raw milk, you will very likely develop listeria, brucella, salmonella, influenza, tuberculosis, E. coli, diphtheria, typhoid fever, campylobacter, or a streptococcal infection. What a mouthful. But with that being said, raw milk has its fans, more specifically the Weston A. Price Foundation, a nonprofit that seems to be the opposite extreme of PETA. They claim that pasteurization gets rid of health benefits, but there is very little evidence of this. In fact, there's only 3 studies that showed a decrease in asthma for raw milk drinkers, all 3 of which were done on kids living on farms, as opposed to a more common suburban environment, so that may have been a contributing factor. Despite people's questionable protests, selling raw milk is banned in Australia, Singapore, and Canada. The EU allows governments to ban it, but none have. While the US prohibits transfer of it between states, a majority do allow domestic sales, though even in places where it's legal, it's under heavy regulation and must come with warnings on the package. But most of the time, it's only used to make special kinds of cheese and alcohol. Still, what do you people see in this stuff?
You do dum-dum, you give me gum-gum.
Chewing gum is... Do I need to fucking explain chewing gum? It's a wad of sugary rubber that you chew on but don't swallow. I swallowed my gum as a kid. It's had a long history, going back to the Stone Age where it was made with tar. Of course, they use more normal ingredients now, but a far bigger problem remains unchanged. Pollution. People cannot dispose this stuff correctly. They're always tossing them on the ground for people to step on. Either that, or they stick them underneath tables to attract bacteria. Because of this, many schools do not let students chew gum. My middle school had a whole ass wall that kids stuck their gum to. Cleaning it must have been hell, so I guess they decided to just give up and leave it there. It's quite the common annoyance here in America, but over in Singapore, this problem got so bad that gum was federally banned. People were sticking it on mailboxes, elevator buttons, keyholes, bus seats, and many other inconvenient places. But the straw that broke the camel's back was on public trains. On rare occasions, passengers left gum on the door sensors and caused very expensive disruptions to the service. Catching these violators proved to be difficult, so Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong chose the nuclear option and outlawed the sale of gum altogether. They did allow a brief transition period for stores to clear their inventory, but once that ended, anyone who sold or imported chewing gum would be fined. Singaporeans were not happy with this. Some drove all the way to Malaysia just to buy it and potentially smuggle it back. Those caught with it received public scrutiny by the government to discourage further illegal imports. They took this very seriously. Wrigley, the largest gum manufacturer in the world, did not approve and lobbied US Congress to include gum in their trade agreement. They argued that it's good for your cognitive functioning and dental health, which is true to an extent. So the US and Singapore agreed to allow a special kind of medical gum to be sold by a doctor or pharmacist. Recreational gum, though, is still banned in the country, and the government shows no signs of retracting it.
Nah, you stanky ass big toe out here oil. That shit is mine.
Sassafras albidum is a plant that has been used in many recipes throughout human civilization. It was a key part of Native American culture, to the point where it too was... Oh, somebody's getting fired tonight. They used it not just in cooking, but also as an ingredient for dyes and medicine. Some even speculate that Christopher Columbus was led to America by the smell of sassafras. Later on, methods of extracting the plant's oil were discovered, and it began being added to root beer, tea, toothpaste, soaps, and... how funny. Chewing gum. I just talked about that. Then, in 1960, studies came out showing that saffrol, the principal component of the substance, could cause liver cancer. Following this, the FDA banned all commercial products containing sassafras oil. Root beer and tea manufacturers had to either use a different ingredient or find a way to eliminate all traces of saffrol. Private brewers, though, are still able to use it, just as long as those creations aren't being sold to consumers.
Chip.
In 2016, a small chip manufacturer named Pocky introduced a flavor based on the world's hottest pepper, the Carolina Reaper. Each chip was so hot, they had to be sold one at a time, because a bag full of them would be dangerous. To promote it, a contest was held where if you ate one of the chips on camera, you could win a year's worth of Pocky products and a neon sign. Immediately, the chips flew off the shelves and trended all across social media. Pocky had hit the jackpot, and soon after they were acquired by Hershey? Ew! We do not eat Hershey's in this household. We eat Feastables. Buy the right chocolate. Praise Mr. Beast. Hershey rebranded it as the One Chip Challenge and started selling it inside a coffin-shaped box. Every year they would hold a contest similar to the first one, while occasionally adding more spices to make it even hotter. On the website, there was a wall of infamy showing every single person who completed the challenge. One anchor tried it during a news segment, but ended up vomiting on live TV. King Harris, son of the rapper T.I., gave the chip to a homeless man and offered him $50 if he completed it. He ended up failing, so he only got $20. That is fucked up. The packaging stated that the chip could be dangerous if you were a child, pregnant, had allergies, or simply couldn't handle spicy food. But many kids ignored this. A Colorado school district had to ban the challenge because so many students were hospitalized. Then, in September 2023, a 14-year-old Harris Wollaba lost his life after attempting the challenge. Not only was he too young for it, but he also had a congenital heart defect that made it deadly. Once this story broke out, Pocky recalled every last chip and issued refunds to its consumers. In 2024, Hershey discontinued the Pocky brand altogether. There was a warning label, so it's unlikely a lawsuit could go through, but nonetheless, the Wollaba family did not deserve to go through this.
Uranium fever has gone and got me down.
Toxic waste is a line of candy claiming to be so sour that it's a biohazard. Every container challenges you on how long you can keep a piece in your mouth. I personally had never heard of it until now, but it seems to be quite popular, having several flavors and variations all around the world. However, toxic waste might literally be toxic waste, because in 2011, the FDA found a very high concentration of lead in the nuclear sludge bar. Candy Dynamics, the makers of the product, were in a very awkward scandal, but was able to make it out unscathed. After recalling all the bars, they made a statement saying that their branding is purely tongue-in-cheek and they did not mean to actually sell toxic waste. So how did this happen? Well, the snack's ingredients came from Pakistan, a country that hasn't had the best record with exporting safe goods. Despite this brief hiccup, toxic waste continued on, though in 2023 they encountered another setback with the slime liquor. It had a ball that could unexpectedly detach from the stick and choke someone, but all they had to do was redesign it so the ball wouldn't fall out.
I'd rather eat out
the rotten asshole of a roadkill skunk than play this game.
In 2004, the gummy worm manufacturer Trolley was about to be acquired by Wrigley. Kraft, Trolley's owner at the time, decided that the brand should leave off with a bang. So they introduced roadkill-themed gummies. They came in the shapes of squirrels, chickens, and snakes with tire tracks on them. Don't you just hate it when you run over a snake with your car? Animal rights activists were outraged and threatened to boycott the company for encouraging animal abuse. I see where they're coming from. My Starburst told me to commit forgery. Kraft quickly realized this was not a good idea and dropped the product. As reported on in 2 articles with the headlines, "Firm hits brakes on roadkill candy" and "Roadkill sweets grind to a halt." Edgy. I'm just wondering, how does one even come up with this idea? Who saw roadkill and thought it'd be a fun treat for kids? Or who saw gummies and thought they should be in the shape of dead animals?
Yeah, this is big brain time.
Alright, I'm gonna need to do some explaining for the international viewers. So in these markets, there's a chocolate M&M-like candy called Smarties, which was invented in England in the 30s. However, before it got the chance to enter the US market, someone in New Jersey created another candy called Smarties, which were instead these sour tablets. Due to trademark issues, the chocolate Smarties are not sold in America, and tablet Smarties are only produced in one other country, Canada. But Canada also has the chocolate Smarties, so the tablet Smarties are called Rockets there. Just so we're clear, this segment is about the tablet Smarties, aka Rockets. Got it? Good. I have not met a single person who likes these things. They are nasty. Yet they're always given out on Halloween or Valentine's or whenever candy is given. Every time I see them, I wonder, how does such a universally hated snack sell well enough to continue being produced? I mean, look at what they call their lollipops. I am never going to make a video that doesn't acknowledge this subject matter at least once ever again, aren't I? Then, while researching this video, I found the answer. Turns out, a popular pastime in middle schools is to pretend Smarties are drugs. Kids often crush them into a powder and either snort it like crack or put it in their mouths and exhale Smartie smoke. This could put them at risk for nasal cuts, allergic reactions, lung irritations, development of a real drug addiction, or worst of all, maggots infesting your nose. At least it'll speed up Casu Marzu production. This trend is believed to have started from YouTube and began spreading like wildfire around 2011. Upon noticing this, schools across the country banned Smarties. CBS interviewed a doctor about the ordeal, and he outright said children who engage in this behavior may need a mental health evaluation from a medical professional. Brutal. And while we're on the subject of cocaine, Coca Cola. First invented as a medicine using the magic snow, it has gradually evolved and become the biggest consumer product of all time. You could travel to just about any square foot of land and chances are it'll be readily available, unless that point is in Cuba, North Korea, or Russia. In the latter's case, Coke chose to halt its operations to protest the Ukraine war, but the other two were not in the company's control. Both North Korea and Cuba have very strict trade regulations. They allow practically no imports and will not let American companies like Coca Cola do business there. But they do import it from the very few countries they like and sell it secondhand. You really thought you could escape capitalism? Tough shit, buddy. Cuba in particular is especially interesting because that's where Coke's very first foreign plant was set up, and Fidel Castro, despite being the one who issued the US embargo, was a huge fan of the drink. During the New Coke fiasco, he called the change in recipe a sign of capitalist decadence, even though the CEO who came up with the idea was a Cuban migrant who left because of Castro's oppressive rule. He was the indirect cause of New Coke. Crazy stuff. There are other markets that the company had issues with at first, but they were able to resolve them. As of 2025, these 3 countries are the only places where Coca-Cola is not officially sold. But Coca-Cola do not count in this video because it's a drink, and drinks do not count as food. Mirabelles are a type of plum grown in the Lorraine region of France. It's a rather typical fruit, having a sweet and juicy flavor and being used to make wine, pies, and jam. In theory, an organically grown product like this should not cause any adversity whatsoever. But as it turns out, import of Mirabelles to the United States is generally restricted. That's literally all this Wikipedia article says. So why is it banned? There's no toys you could choke to death on, no exotic ingredients that will cut up your intestines. It does not come from any animal, let alone an endangered one. What is the problem here? It's France, like always. More specifically, the geography of it. Lorraine has a very specific climate that makes Mirabelle plums the highest quality possible. Thus, they've been designated as a protected origin food and cannot be grown outside of the area. Technically, you could import them, but by the time you get the plums, they'd probably be rotten. I'm genuinely struggling with this segment. This is easily the most nothing burger ban in the video. Give me something better.
500 cigarettes.
Oh ho ho, that's more like it. Candy cigarettes might just be the single most controversial food product in the world. The amount of federal bans this stuff has racked up is staggering. These are chalk-like sugar sticks with a sweet powder inside to blow out and imitate beekeeping. Unlike Smarties, this is 100% intentional, right down to the packaging, and they've been marketed to kids with some very clever strategies. At the store, they're placed on the lowest shelves so parents don't notice, and go for so cheap that kids can easily afford it on their own. They first began appearing around the late 19th century, and remained popular with children for several decades. Then the 60s came around, which was when the negative health effects of smoking really became widespread knowledge. Government officials vilified the makers of candy cigarettes, so real cigarette companies put out statements distancing themselves. Thing is, candy cigarettes usually have parodies of real brands on their packaging, but have never faced copyright issues. It isn't too much of a conspiracy theory to believe that these companies want kids to buy the fake ones, so when they grow up, they're more likely to get hooked on the real thing, thus earning them more revenue. Plenty of data shows this works. As a result, many countries outlawed any and all candies that resembled cigarettes, though some manufacturers were able to rework them to be more family-friendly, such as Australia's very own, which became fads. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there have been a lot of candies made to resemble drugs. For a brief period, there was Hippie Sippy, modeled after a female hero. Big League Chew came from an old baseball tradition where players chewed tobacco to warm up, and every so often someone tries to sell a candy smoking pipe, but fails. Honestly, this stuff is just pointless. Giga Chads like me just pretended that a pretzel stick or french fry or whatever was a cigarette. That was perfectly fine. Why go through the legal trouble? Well, anyways, I gotta go to my pretend chemo for my pretend lung cancer.